one, but let me make sure. Okay, Chief. I think we're waiting for one person. Let me check. All right.
Excuse me, Chief?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to warn you. Sorry, I was having tech issues for a second. I meant to tell you that Nelly and Zaire won't be able to make it today because their day is running behind. So I just wanted to let you guys know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Eric.
Okay. So we can start with
Okay. Welcome to the 18th Ask the Chief Global Forum. Well,
West
actually,
Coast.
West Coast Forum. And, so, anyway, we're going to be continuing and hopefully ending the review on Rick and Ralph Rex the Internet. So, going to start out like we have been starting out, doing exercises. Okay. Starting with 5 of the clearing, bringing things up to the surface so that we can contain them after this. Starting 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, now we're going to do the bump before we do the containment. All right, hands approximately 12 inches apart. Okay. So anyone not feeling the energy that I'm pushing through, let me know. Okay, I'm going to bump it up. Let me know if you're not feeling that increase. Okay, great. So with that, we're going to take it and use that energy to do our containment. Starting with 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And as you know, this is to contain the forum, contain your space. And I'm going to do a push out just to push anything out that's in your space that might be trying to interfere with the forum. Okay, so I think we'll get started with the review. I guess this is part 3, I guess.
Yes, part 3.
Okay. So, okay, Ms. A is going to start out.
So just to get through everything, we're just going to jump right into the rest of the movie and just go as quickly as we can, I guess. I don't know. So let's see. So as we left off last time, it was where Vanellope and Ralph were sabotaging themselves by increasing the price for the steering wheel. Yeah, steering wheel on eBay. And then after that, Ralph gets super angry and he starts doing what Ralph does best, break things. And so he was like breaking a kiosk and he like crushed it and then he like threw it and it hit someone and took their internet out. And it just the things that it seems to be a common theme on movies and like shows. I know when I've seen a lot of Korean dramas, it's always about throwing a fit when you don't get your way. You know?
Yeah, there are a number of dramas that way. I think even here in some of those towns where someone is, well, in a lot of American films also. Yeah, a lot of with men, if they lose their temper, they go in and they tear up their apartment or something like that. Or, women losing their temper, then taking all the dishes and breaking them and things of that sort. And they try to make you feel like, it just seems like they're trying to make you think that there's something cathartic about it, and relaxing about it in reality and just tearing stuff up. But usually at the end, say, oh, I feel so much better. But then the aftermath is like, now you got to clean up all this mess. Or you have to replace things. So anyway, with that, yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So then the next thing, Penelope is worried that she blew her only chance to get the one thing they supposedly needed. And that's just another example of like, you only have one shot about time, the illusion of time. And that you have to get, if you can only get this holy grail or this special item, you can get your dreams to come true.
Yeah, it's another like stress producing, essence producing method of time constraints. Because even then, after they did this idiotic thing of raising the price, just being just blatantly stupid, really, the woman who deals with the, the transactions for eBay tells them that they have 24 hours in which to get the money, for the item, which again, the stress producing, essence producing.
So a lot of times, I know from my experiences in the cult, there's always black or white, good or bad, like, sin or righteous, all these opposite things. So, for example, the first thing that they come upon is family, which is kind of like in the ghetto, like where, sometimes people think, well, if I can't get this job, then I just have to sell my body, or sell myself. It's very extremes that they go to for certain things. Is that not true?
Well, yeah, I think in certain situations it definitely is that there's folks who feel that they have limited perspective. Opportunities in their lives, and that just has to do with their limited, in other words, where they grow up or who they're growing up around. If these individuals have limited perspectives, they tend to pass those limited perspectives on to their children. Sorry. So yeah, they run into this family, and it's like the opportunities to make cash or whatever, seem to be this really, really insurmountable thing. Yeah, so they need, I forgot exactly how much.
Yeah, quite a bit. I think more than 1,000.
Yeah, something really, really dumb.
Yeah.
And so of course this guy, what he has is like $5 per thing or whatever, which obviously is not going to do it for them to try to make make this deadline in 24 hours. But then they come up with this deal where kind of high risk opportunity having to do with stealing a car, which is interesting in the sense that in real life there are times when young men get involved in situations, try to make fast money for whatever reason, and get involved in these scams having to do with basically stealing or robbing or selling illegal substances and things of that sort. But anyway, going back to this is supposed to be a little cleaner than that. This kind of, to me, it kind of mirrors that a little bit. That the one opportunity that they have to actually make the money that they need involves going and stealing someone else's property. So with that, I guess they take the mission.
Well, like for example, you said they were nickel and diming it with these like small jobs. And then he's like, well, I got a big job. You can steal Shank's car.
Right.
And so then he also has like a weird henchman who has like no neck and just his head on the top, which is pretty strange looking. And you were talking about just the environment of the ghetto and how it affects people. Just going in there and being in there a while. Like when I used to do outreach for the cult, they would go into these ghettos, and just being in that atmosphere can bring your energy lower and lower.
Yeah, well, those type of environments are just, essence sucking, arenas anyway. So yeah, again, the depression aspect, and even it's just something kind of funny. They even had like this little robotic looking roach or something like that, just to get the point across. And this is the low class, this is the ghetto. But anyway, moving from that, they do take the job, I guess, and they go and to slaughter race. And I think when does she find it interesting when they enter that game, or was it after?
No, it was like, because it's interesting because Vanellope at first is very affected by whatever way Ralph feels about everything. So initially they're like kind of like scared because there's like, it's so different from what they're used to, which is like car crashes, explosions, smog, and pit bulls, and a shark that lives in the gutter. More or less danger around every corner. And so at first they're like, get in and get out. But then whenever she meets Shank, she sees Shank and her crew.
Yeah, but actually I think what it was, they come in and there's some other guys trying to steal the car.
Oh yeah, right.
And and of course Shank and her crew catches these guys, and I forgot what they do with these guys.
Torch them to nothing.
So anyway, more or less deletes these guys.
Yeah.
And they have to start, they're also switching back and forth to the kids who are players, who are playing whose avatars are trying to steal Shank's car. And then they're like, oh man, we got to start from scratch, because Shank's caught them. And so after that, now that's exactly what happened. They do this kind of ruse where Wreck-It Ralph comes in and he pretends to be some
kind of noise department.
Yeah, something on
department
the
of
city
noise.
was, yeah. So he comes in and does this kind of goofy thing, and Vanellope, she jumps in the car, sleeps in the car, and then they take off. And so I think once he gets in the car, and it's like, wow, this is really cool because it's a lot different than anything that she's been dealing with and driving with in her game. And so there's this little interest going on. She's got it's piquing her interest, and so they take off, and she's doing all this racing to escape these guys. But these guys are really really very talented, especially Shanks. Now Shanks, she's using someone else's vehicle, of course, right?
To catch her.
Yeah.
So it's like what is it, like showcasing her skills so she can use someone else's kind of janky car to do the same thing. Or to do something quite intense. And it's funny because they do like this thing where they show each one of their skills, like Shank, the queen of the road, skills, superhuman speed and style per miles, and her favorite weapon is smarts. And so Chief was talking about something that was quite interesting, and Shank is what she coined as a universal feeder, someone who can feed on both men and women.
Well,
no matter their ages.
Yeah, but I think even we can get into that when we find that after they try to get away from things and then they get caught.
Yeah.
And so Vanellope's she's kind of surprised because she fashioned herself as premier driver, and she can be anyone, which is the deal with the game that she comes from. So she gets caught by these individuals who are using all this, interesting skill, and and the racing course that they have to run is, has all these obstacles and so on and so forth. So she's impressed. She's excited. She's geeked. So also, I think when I don't know if she was getting impressed with Shanks when she first saw her, but definitely after this, she gets impressed with Shanks. Yeah. And we were talking about someone had a question. Actually, I think that's where it came from. Had a question having to do with whether Shanks was a feeder.
Okay.
So I think maybe that's the question that you wanted to address at this particular point in time, since you brought that up.
Well, she was talking about the question refers actually to Vanellope at the end of the at the end of the game, at the end of, more towards the end of the movie, where Shanks is helping Penelope respawn into the slaughter race.
Mm-hmm.
So that's about whether is Shanks is trying to help Penelope,
Or whether Shanks
trying to
is a feeder.
feed on her. So it's not. I mean, we can do that now if you like. Or
Well,
we can just,
when we talk, when I talked about Shanks being sort of like a universal feeder, it had to actually do with that question.
yeah.
When I actually gave that answer.
Well, I can give another example of how she feeds, because whenever you know how they burned those two players who were trying to steal her car. So Shank has like a team, and the team was like, aren't Pyro, one of the members of her team, is like, aren't we too hard on the players? And then she always has this answer that just smooths over anything, which is like, where's the life lesson if we go easy on them? Failure or disappointment is a part of life. And she'll just, or like, but they worked hard to get here. And she's like, without challenges, it would be predictable. And she's like a living Instagram thing. And coming up with random quotes and things. And everything that she says seems to just like appease them. And that's what made me think of what you were talking about.
Yeah, where they're literally not, they're not going to challenge her. Also, it goes, with what I talked about, just how the system in this world is just religion. So it's like she's some kind of a deity amongst these guys.
Yes.
Well, they won't question anything, any answers that she gives them in response to whatever their question is.
Yeah.
So, and also, she's good looking. She's got style, and she has the voice and everything. So there are individuals who like that, and they call this basic charisma. But it's literally, and most individuals who have that, I consider them to be universal feeders, because they will feed off of the individuals of the same or opposite sex. Just people in general seem to be attracted to them. So it's like a universal feeder. It's a certain form of a siren, I'd say a siren, because she has this image, and she doesn't even have to go out and lure anyone in, do physical activity or anything, or flirting. It's just her whole essence attracts people to her. So the vibration is like a vibration that a person has. If you met individuals who are like that, they just have a persona, which is basically a vibration. You don't know exactly why. I find myself attracted to this person. Guys, it's a pretty girl, of course. It's just kind of like the obvious, but there's something else that's going on too, depending on how much that person is attractive, or that person is attracted to that person, or how obsessed they may become over that individual. The more obsessed the person is over a certain person that they don't even know, but they see this image of this individual, or they kind of meet this person for the first time, that energy of that individual is literally feeding on their essence. So, anyway.
And this is okay, but a lot of times when someone is like a universal feeder, they're also quite skilled with corkscrewing. And for example, the butcher boy is someone she really has in her, stable. And whenever the other two, who are maybe more new members to her group, start questioning whether they're too harsh on the players, butcher boy chimes in, "I honor your journey, Shanks," and she's like, "As I honor yours," And she was like, actually, that means that I honor your leadership, and it's like, I honor you, you're following my lead. And a lot of times, like you said, people's corkscrews will respond during certain situations to aid the person whose corkscrew is inside of them. But,
Well, I think
okay. Okay. So it also like sets the stage after that, because Shank says whoever gets my car would have to be the best of the best.
Yeah.
So then Penelope steals the car, and the show goes on.
Oh yeah, well yeah. From that point, and then she steals the
Yeah.
car, then the chase scene,
Yeah.
and then after they're caught, the coolness of Shanks is that she realizes, from the story and from Ralph's bumbling, this, reason for trying to steal the car, she turns him on to this other siren called Yes.
Yes.
Who's a friend of hers. And, so for Vanellope, not only is this woman's like, boss racer and she's really got style and a sultry voice and everything, she's got connections and she's cool with, she's going to hook me up. So, again, that's part of that charisma and that whole universal, feeding type of energy. So anyway, from there, they end up going with.
This is for someone's question. So a part of the appeal that Shanks finds in Vanellope is that she has this special skill. And a lot of times people who are major feeders, who are they feeding for? They're always feeding for their masters, feeding for yin or yin. So they usually like to draw in people with skill so that they can gather more essence that way. And so Shanks finds it interesting that Vanellope has the skill to glitch. That's how she was able to get past a lot of the very odd and dangerous obstacles that were in the slaughter race game. Shanks just knows that game like the back of her hand, so she can go through certain fiery, dangerous situations and get it through. But it was talking about how the question from one of the clients is, one time Vanellope glitches to get through the road that's on fire, and another time she glitches before her first race with Shank, which we talked about. Are there many different reasons why someone would glitch in this realm, or in what people call real life? Or what are some common reasons?
Depends on what you mean by glitch.
Glitching means like whenever if you're talking to, like for example, I talk to relatives and I've talked to them about something that is other than religion. They tend to either repeat their previous conversation or they just change the subject. And I'm assuming that's what they mean by this glitch.
But so what reason would Vanellope have to glitch?
Vanellope would glitch when she would try to get through certain situations.
The stress caused her to glitch.
And stress too.
So
sometimes she would do it purposefully.
Well, wow, I totally forgot that was a question. That was sent in last time. Yeah, you can elaborate because I think I've talked about people glitching in general before in other forms.
Yeah,
when,
yes, you have.
They're trying, in other words, they're trying a certain approach to something, and it's not working. So, with the whole reason for Vanellope glitching has to do with stress, but then you said that she actually can do it on command in a sense.
After a while.
After a while.
She could. And you can tell because later on in the movie, she starts glitching not intentionally because she feels like things are her fault because of guilt and things like that. But in this case, you can tell people will glitch because if it's something that they don't want you to do, like for example, if I wanted to do something that the relatives didn't want me to do, like go do something on my own or try something new, and I would ask to make a request for me to go do those things, they would try to change the subject, or they would try to just keep talking in a loop and never answer my question. So that's one of the things that I thought was glitching.
For me, I would say that one that stands out has to do with someone trying to run a number on you, and they have pretty much almost like scripted in their mind. And usually if someone has these types of scripts in their minds, it means that they're kind of that kind of person who tries to run these numbers on other people. And I've had experience with individuals who try to run a script on me. But the deal is that I've been around a lot longer and I've been in a lot more intense types of environments where these individuals usually target people who are a lot younger, who haven't had as much experience. So they'll run the script and they try to run the script on me, primarily because they don't know exactly how to actually interact with what I do and so on. So they try to run a similar script that they would run on someone else. Sometimes it has to do with trying to, do a, joke with you, but the joke is at your expense. It's almost like a put down joke, but I'm just joking around. And with, I can, see that stuff coming from a mile away, and I would just catch it and I turn it around and hit them with it, and then they would glitch, which means that this particular approach isn't working, and then you will see them, and as I mentioned in some of the past forums, you would just see them. Some would just eyes would kind of slightly roll back in their head. Some would go a little cross-eyed. Some go a little wall-eyed. It's really interesting just to pay attention to the faces of people that you literally, when you stump their their game, or you stop whatever they're trying to do to basically get you to do something that that will benefit them more than will benefit you. So that's again, just for the sake of repeating, that's what I consider to be a glitch in the sense of my experience with dealing with glitches. Again, Penelope's is, for this movie is kind of a unique little glitchy thing that they use as part of the story, and so
It's vaguely connected.
yeah, it's vaguely connected. Shanks sees this weird little skill of hers that she considers to be a skill as something that she can use that will probably make their game more interesting, I would say. And when we're talking about Shanks being an international feeder, she is definitely feeding something else. So the way when you're looking at it, you think maybe she's the one who's getting all the essence, but in reality, she's not. She's just literally just a portal for that essence to be fed to someone else. She gets her piece of the action, but whoever it is on the other side who oversees all this stuff, they're getting their bigger piece of the pie. So anyway.
You were talking about how Ralph is like an emotional feeder, emotional vampire.
Yeah.
Emotional vampire, because then he starts telling Shanks and like blubbering, and Penelope's like, "Oh my gosh, this cool person is gonna think less of me because of this guy," and he's like blubbering, and so he's getting essence off of Penelope's embarrassment, whether he knew it or not.
Yeah, well, it's funny because there are individuals like, if you remember back in high school, where there are those who want to be recognized by the popular kids, but they have these, this friend, because they're a bunch of, a couple of little nerds, but one nerd is, is blossoming and she's looking, more attractive as she gets older. The other one's still kind of like, has kind of like an average looking thing going on, but kind of goofy, nerdy, goofy. And they end up, running into the so-called, cool kids, the popular kids, and the nerdy kid starts telling jokes, and the friend who wants to get the approval of the popular kids goes, "Oh my goodness, this is over for me. She's gonna kill everything," So it was something that seemed like a bit like that with that particular scene. Yeah.
So then, of course, because Shanks, not only does she have those skills you were talking about, she understands people a lot more than anyone in that group, because she says, she's like, okay, you can stop crying. Although I do respect your wonderful display of vulnerability. And then she's like, friendship is everything to us too. We're like family, like an Instagram again. And then Ralph's like, does that mean I can take your car? And then she's like, absolutely not, but I do want to help. And it's like a carrot and stick thing. She's like, baits him and then switches it and then gives him something that they were wanting in the first place.
Yeah.
So now we go to the head algorithm that she was talking about named Yes. And they tell Yes that Shank sent them, and the story goes on. So then now Ralph was not interested at all because he wanted to go back to Stanley's and nickel and dime it all forever, and instead of doing what Shanks wanted, because he could tell that his fetish, Vanellope, was interested in Shank instead of him, so he didn't want to go along with it.
Yeah, it's a situation where he'd rather it's like, cutting off the nose to spite your face. He'd rather do something that's not going to work rather than do something that will work, that someone else who is his fetish, Penelope, finds interesting. So if he goes along with what Shanks wants, then it makes Shanks look that much better. So he's just rather just tank everything, trying to nickel and dime, which means there's no way in the world they're going to ever make that deadline to actually buy that steering wheel. Or, yeah. Well, actually, I was thinking how eBay works anyway. Doesn't if they don't pay for it, then the person has to like put it back up.
Yeah, I guess
And then reset the price again anyway. But anyway, I guess for the sake of the story, they didn't really mention any of that. So again, talking about the pettiness of of Ralph and how that parallels with a lot of individuals that you may have experienced, with where there's a certain pettiness that, or there's someone who comes across that's much cooler than they are, and has something to offer this friend or his fetish, and all you can hear is them criticizing that individual, because what it does, what's going on is that they feel that this person is about to take their food. And that happens in a lot of situations where it's like, wow, isn't so-and-so really, I don't think they're that great. Or, isn't so-and-so really good looking? He's not that good looking, whatever. But it has to do with the friend finding that, that other individual more interesting, or just interesting in general. So the Wreck-It Ralph, he preferred for Penelope just to be in his pocket and not look and see anything of interest anywhere else in the world. Okay.
And so he goes along with it, but he kind of goes along with it like in a pouting.
Yeah, kind of begrudgingly.
Yeah, begrudgingly, like, I want you to know I don't agree with this, but I'm doing you a favor by going along with you.
Yeah, manipulative.
Yes, right.
So,
Okay, so he stops pouting immediately when he sees an image of himself. As soon as they walk into that big arena.
right, because she sets up a what is that called? That platform, BuzzFeed or something. Because Shanks says, "Look, we're gonna hook you up," and she has the one guy bring out that air blower thing or whatever, and then tells Ralph to to like say talk, and they create this this funny little clip. Yeah. And with that clip, that's like their what do you call it, their in or their welcoming card or whatever. Yes. And so yes, I think what maybe points out to, yes, because at first it's like, who's this hillbilly with no shoes, and then her manservant points out
he's the guy with the undulating jowls. That's what he
says. Yeah. And so she goes, oh wow, this guy's getting a lot of play. All right, which is how business works. It's like, oh wow. Okay, I can make some cash. This is what I'm in the business for, to make cash or whatever they made, whatever they get, in the internet game. So then I think she.
Well, Ralph says as soon as he sees his face, he's like, obviously they love me. I told you this place was a great idea.
Yeah, he kind of
takes credit.
360 or whatever, totally. Yeah, it's not 360, but anyway, 180. But yeah, he all of a sudden, he wants to take credit. When before he's just poo-pooing everything.
So Ralph's video is getting 26,232,680 views and 1,311,633 hearts. And then Yes starts telling him what the hearts mean and why they have value. And so she gets him stirred up. Like she just says hearts, and he gets all like excited, and she's trying to like ramp him up to be her new toy.
Yeah, well, I mean, what she feeds, that's how where she feeds off of the popularity of whoever's trending at the time. So she gets him all geeked up, and I forgot exactly what she was saying, that it might be difficult for him to actually sustain that type of popularity, but then he gets really into it, and maybe it just has to do with his ego and him seeing his face there and so on and so forth. And in some ways, they make it look like he's doing Penelope a favor when in reality, he's just doing it for his own, his own sake, because he wants to keep Penelope in his pocket. So anyway, with that, they move on to.
Okay, and let's see. So one of the side things I just noticed there was like a mirror right behind Yes, and you know how mirrors and reflective surfaces will come up again in this movie. So it says, so then after Yes is hyping Ralph up, Penelope comes in and is like, I hate to interrupt your love fest here, but we need money. And so that's whenever he volunteers and maybe tells them what's trending. And they were talking about how human suffering is trending, goat puns are trending, bee puns are trending, all these things. And Ralph agrees to all of them just to keep Penelope around. And so that's whenever they start to create videos for Ralph. And he's literally selling his soul at this point because everything kicks into action. Yes kicks into action. Her pop-up army kicks into action, and all these videos go viral.
Yeah, this kind of has a bit to do with the concept of selling. So that he's going to tap himself out in order to get whatever this dream that he wants, which is again talking about the steering wheel, but in essence getting the steering wheel, which means keeping Penelope in his pocket. So he's willing to sell his soul in order to keep Penelope in his pocket. Now the way that it ends out is just in real so-called real life, selling souls don't end very well anyway. It always the person in the end ends up crashing and burning, or they become has-beens, or things end pretty badly. But there is a little bit of a crash, having to do with this scene. But in the midst of it, I forgot where Penelope had to go. She had to go and do something, and she ends up with all these little Disney princesses.
She decided to be a part of the pop-up army, and of course, Ralph is trying to control where she goes because Yes is going to send her to the gaming district where she probably would meet Shane. So then he says, well, why don't we send her to Disney, Disney World or Disney.
No, that was Ralph's suggestion.
Yes, because he thought it would be safe for her and he could keep her under his control.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see. So.
Now, as far as like the Disney stuff, I don't know if I guess there's something in it having to do with these little princesses who are just locked down, and I guess they sit and they wait to come out, and I don't know what that performance thing they're supposed to be doing, where they call them and they go out.
Yes, who's your Disney princess best friend or something like that?
Yeah, in other words, they're part of the brainwash, on the planet with little girls. Who's your favorite? You got to pick one of these girls to be your favorite, little girls who you want to be like, and so on. And so they're all have this, very, unrealistic fantasy, look to themselves. And I think what happens with Penelope ending up with them, she was out there doing pop-ups. What do they call it when they just, pop-ups where she shouldn't be doing pop-ups and so on. And she gets chased, and then she ends up with the Disney girls. And then kind of, do they call her Princess Penelope?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. So I guess she wasn't lying about that. She definitely didn't get the Disney bill. And one thing leads to another, where these Disney girls are kind of naive and kind of dumb, and they kind of get find her interesting in the way she's dressing and so on, and whatever. So moving past that point, after them doing their little singing thing and all that, I think it gets a little, for me personally, a little bit more interesting after they get past that point.
Okay, great. Yeah. Something is messing with the iPad, Chief. It keeps going up and down.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
So, after she bumps into stormtroopers and hangs out with the Disney princesses, they tell her to do something. They say that if you want to know what your dreams are, to know what what you really want in life, look into a reflective surface, which they said usually was water for them.
Okay.
And
Yeah, no, I tried to move past that point, but actually I did miss that part. So we're going
I'm
back
sorry.
to that.
I just
To the part
it
having to do
keeps
with
jumping up and down, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, we're looking into reflective surfaces to have your dreams come true. Which I definitely would say it's like having little girls who may be impressionable looking into mirrors and thinking that they're that might work, when as you know what mirrors are from the Neo Shamanic point of view and reality, that those are doorways. So it's anything that can get a person to open themselves up to the density on the other side. So looking into mirrors and staring into mirrors, I don't know how many have done that, but when I was a kid, even up until a young adult, it would feel a little creepy if I was standing there just staring at myself in the mirror. Just always felt like I was looking at something else or someone else, either through my eyes or behind me in the mirror, not behind me in the room, but in the mirror. And that's one way that things would feed, because I would feel like the goosebumps rise on my arms or something after a certain point, which means something's going on. Okay.
Thank you, Chief. So there's 30 minutes left until the eBay bid is canceled. And Ralph wanders into the comments section just at that moment. And then he sees that his videos, yes, they're trending because of the pop-up army and all of Yes's work, and he's also making lots of videos, pretty much flooding flooding social media with his videos. And some of the comments were like that he's a worthless bum, he's alone, on a pile of bricks.
Yeah, it's kind of a room that they have off to the side. Yeah, and I guess he's looking for help. I don't know what he's looking for.
I don't know how he wandered in there, but she said, first rule of the internet, don't read the comments. Yeah,
that's true, because there's a lot of trolls. It's really interesting. When I was dealing with some of the stuff, some years back, and one of those concerns was whether someone was going to make a negative comment about something that I posted on YouTube or something like that. And I could feel it, even though it didn't happen. I could feel it, that this angst come up, even though no one actually really sent any negative comments. But it was like this whole vulnerability that came up behind that. And apparently, I was thinking, well, maybe it's just me, but then watching this and realizing that there are a lot of folks who are, trolls are there to play on your vulnerability, and you pump out this essence having to do with vulnerability. It's all about feeding, whatever's in control of whatever's going on, or whatever's in control of trolls, literally.
You said something interesting. This is not about you, Ralph. It's about them, which is true.
Yeah, that's true. Because someone who spends a lot of time just trying to make people feel bad or feel upset, there's something up with that person. Because again, they don't really know. Some folks can take it in stride, but they don't really know exactly how the person's reacting unless the person decides they want to fight with them, and send a reply to a troll, which I wouldn't advise, But again, it's another form of essence feeding.
Yeah, and then the immediate response he has is like, I don't care, I'm fine.
Yeah, it goes into denial.
He denies things, and even in sessions with Chief, people will lie to themselves. They'll lie to Chief too, and they're only hurting themselves when they do that. And also when he's feeling sad like this, he starts glomming on to his fetish, Vanellope, even harder. He says, I don't need anyone. As long as I have Vanellope, I know I'm a real hero, And he shows his little medal
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a tall order for to be a friend with someone like that. because they're putting a whole lot of weight on you. In other words, how they feel throughout the day depends on whether you are still their friend or not. It's again, as we know from the first couple of reviews, he's just basically selfish. This isn't. It's just more of his selfishness. Literally.
So Ralph finally makes enough money, and if Ralph makes enough money, and then Vanellope is busy looking in a puddle of water.
So trying to
two
get her
things happening
free,
at the same- Yes.
and see who she really is or something like that.
Yeah. And she's talking to Shank, and she's like, even if I got the steering wheel at this point, I don't even want that life anymore.
I thought that was separate from the looking in the water thing.
Oh, it is, but she meets Shank through looking in the puddle.
Oh, okay.
It's like some kind of connection
Oh, right, okay.
in this
Yeah.
in this illusion, which is really interesting because sometimes people think, oh, when I'm thinking about someone, they don't know I'm thinking about them, and that might be the case, but you're still sometimes tapping into other people's energy, or a lot of the times.
Yeah, if a person's aware, they will know if someone's thinking about them. If someone's name or their face pops up in your head randomly, that means that person is thinking about you, or even some individuals are focusing on you. So you kind of have to not be aware in order to to miss that, and that happens with a lot of folks. That there will be someone who come to mind, and then a minute later or less, the phone will ring, or they'll get a text from that individual. So when someone's thinking about you, there is like this energetic line or whatever that flows from the person who's thinking to the person that they're thinking about.
That's why containment is so essential to
Yeah, that's why
people from trying to connect to you when you don't want them to.
Yeah, because people will feed off you that way also, just by thinking about you.
That's why a lot of people who have a lot of focus on them tend to lose their minds. So much connections to them.
Yeah.
So she's looking in the water and she's like, fuck it, it's not working. Excuse me. And then she feels disappointed, and then suddenly the water starts to sparkle after she gives off that disappointment essence. And it reflects Slaughter Race. And suddenly she's teleported, or with her mind or whatever, to Slaughter Race, and she interacts with Shank. And she talks to her, and she's saying that she really enjoys all the weird people that are in Slaughter Race because she feels weird. And she starts to relate to wanting to be there, and that her dream must be in the Slaughter Race, but then she feels like this indebted feeling towards Ralph at the same time. And Ralph just so happens to be able to view her through this little pop-up video camera that Yes gave her.
Yeah, and he sees, I think he overhears the whole interaction or something. Yeah.
And also in that whole situation where she's looking into the water, Shanks gives her a new car, and she gets, she goes on this like little trip to the moon in her car. And so then Ralph is gonna lose his shit now, and he begins to.
Well, right, he goes, but in that, does he go to this guy's family or whatever? And it gets this, or am I jumping the gun?
No, he does go back to his family.
To get this virus?
Yes, to get the virus.
Okay.
But somewhat, so Sayre asked a question, but in a phrase, and she says, Vanellope thought she found a better life, but she's still stuck in her racer program, so it's really a false life she's living, and density is still feeding on her, even though she isn't around Ralph anymore. And you were talking about lateral motion versus.
Yeah, well, the reality is, yes, she's still in the system and she's still being fed on, but again, it wasn't so much the lateral, move. It was more like, a diagonal move. So either way, even though she's still in a situation where she can be fed on, she's also in a situation where she's becoming more aware of more things that are out there in the world. So it wasn't, it was just a lateral thing, and she ended up just doing the same thing she was doing before, or parallel race where they're literally things are just very, very similar. Then I would say that she's not gaining anything. But even within a realm where you're going, you get fit on, you can still gain something. But depending on what you're looking for, if she's looking for more adventure, she's not looking for enlightenment. So she's looking for more adventure, and that that is something that she's getting, and also it expands her. So the thing is that Shanks is smarter than Ralph could ever be. So as far as like Penelope learning anything from Ralph, not much of anything. It's just like being static and staying still and being stuck in routine. Meeting someone new like a Shanks who has all these skills and so on and so forth, and and a lot of savvy and a lot of I should say people skills. Penelope would actually become someone less naive by interacting with someone like a Shanks. So yeah, she's still in the feeding zone, but there are benefits to her moving in a diagonal upward opposed to staying put with the Ralph or moving diagonal into some other situation that is no different from where she came from. Okay?
And you were talking about even in this realm that we're living in, there are moves that you make that might not be in moving to enlightenment, but you can move upwards incrementally.
And sometimes, depending on that move, you can end up finding yourself getting at some idea of what enlightenment might be, or seeking even more. So again, same thing happens, in this realm. I would say from the time where I grew up to where I ended up in New York City to even ending up where I am now were diagonal moves. Even though I'm still in the feeding realm, there are diagonal moves that actually I became more aware, more intellectual in certain ways, more comfortable with dealing with random people and so on, having to do with the business I was in. So it still benefited me in a sense as a consciousness. I still learned more than I would have learned if I stayed back where I was. So part of enlightenment has to do with the learning, the ability to learn, and actually the joy of learning. So you get more into changing your situation, and more of looking for towards the excitement of learning something new. And I know a lot of times there's some nervousness that there also that you got to pay your dues to essence. Your essence to density or whatever. But in the end, even with the nervousness, I still have the desire to move and keep moving upward. And in the end, I have no regrets about any of the moves that I ever made. Even things that fell apart, there were things that you learned from it. So in the realms of enlightenment, understand that is also a certain point of enlightening yourself. But you're enlightening yourself still within the dense realm, but it's still a certain form of enlightenment. Or enlightenment. Okay.
Because it's interesting because you can see that.
Yes.
Just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So as you can see that Vanellope has an adventurous spirit. She likes adventure. And it was killing her to be with Ralph because this is what she says. She feels at home in Slaughter Race because it's full of weirdos. And the race is super dangerous and you never know what's going to happen next. Back home, I know exactly what's going to happen next because Ralph's dream is to do the same thing every day. And then Shanks says, well, there's no law, best friends have to have the same dreams. And that was just showing her enjoyment of adventure itself.
Yeah, and also, the wisdom of someone like a Shanks character. It's like, yeah, you can be friends. You don't have to, be in each other's back pocket 24/7. So if he's really a friend, then he should actually feel good about you actually doing something that makes you feel good.
So,
Yeah, yes.
it's like, okay, so his family is Ralph meets family after he realizes that Vanellope is having thoughts. And his family's like, wow, that's a kick in the face. That's a real donkey kick in the teeth, you know, and he's stoking the
Yeah,
fire
he doesn't help
within
anything.
Ralph.
Yeah.
And,
Well, you know, his family's kind of a downer anyway. He lives in the
Yeah,
ghetto.
the ghetto.
So,
so then Ralph says, she's supposed to be my best friend. And which is translation short, she's my food, or she.
yeah, but in other words, in his definition, that's what he considers the best friend to be.
Her servant.
Yeah, his servant. You know, never really asked what she considers the best friend to be.
Right. He never asks much about what her opinion is about anything.
Okay.
And then he says, she's been brainwashed. That's what it is. That's what this is. I know the real Penelope wouldn't abandon me like this. I have to go get her out of there now. And then, you know, that's a common thing for.
That is a common thing. He's stuck in his delusion, you know,
Yeah.
and his psychosis, really. Because, you know, literally, you know, looking at him, he's really mentally ill. You know, so individuals who can't see others who are around them, there's a mental block there. There's seriously a mental block. And maybe because so many people suffer from it, they don't want to look at it as a mental illness. You know, it's a certain level of insensitivity that if you are a balanced type of a consciousness, you should actually be able to sense what's going on with the people who are around you, and not so much about, you know, it's all about me and you know, and everyone else are bit players in my psychosis, in my movie. So.
Yeah, I related to Vanellope in the way that, because Chief taught me not to just see, you know, point out the Ralphs, but to point out my part in the situation that I don't enjoy. Like in the past, there's individuals who would treat me like a servant or like a fetish or like a maid, and I was a part of that. Like Vanellope, her consideration for Ralph kept her in this fetish role, kept her in this servitude kind of role. And I had to see that, you know, I have to make my own steps out of this. I have to learn to respect myself. I have to learn what is my MO in the way that I allow people to, in the past, to tell me and do things for them because I think that they care about me or I think I care about them. But I'm still trying to figure that out for myself as well, like move forward.
Yeah, well, it's an ongoing journey, so.
Yes. So then after that, he says, his family's like, whoa, you know, you can't go in there being like, what is that, a knight in shining armor and try to take her against her will. She won't appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he says, I admire the impulse, but you going in there like some kind of white knight, she's obviously going to hold it against you. And Ralph says, so what? I'm going to let her stay in a game that's already bad for her. And it's my right to try to, you know, it's her, he feels like it's his right to keep Vanellope in his world, I guess.
Well, it sounds like, you know, people struggle with their parents when they get to be in a young adult. And even beyond, you know, past, you know, college age or whatever, when you're out there and you're actually working and taking care of yourself, there's still got these individuals who still have their opinions about what you should be doing, which has to do with their ideas. A lot of times have to do with maybe what they wanted to do, but they weren't capable of doing it, and they want to live through you in some weird way.
Or the quote that you made recently for your True Logic, Chief, about change and about, it says, change is constant, change is natural, so please don't try to relate to me as if I were a snapshot from 10 years ago.
Right.
It's like he's seeing Vanellope as he saw her originally, but she's already ready to make a change.
Yeah, which is looking at her as, you know, as something static.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's definitely what the quote was inspired by. This weirdness that folks, I don't know if they're so involved in themselves or or whatever's going on, to where they look at someone that they used to know, or that they spent a certain amount of time with some years ago, and then they look and they expect that person to still be the same person that they were 5-10 years ago, and they don't even acknowledge that perhaps they've changed. And what I would say to someone who says, oh, you've changed, I haven't changed, like it's a good thing, I said, well, that's a problem. I really feel for you if you haven't changed in 5 years or 10 years. That's natural. You're supposed to change, and you're supposed to evolve, really, is how I see it. Evolve, learn, try to become more interesting. But a lot of people are in these ruts where they just don't, they don't change. In spite of the fact that the world is changing around them. They try their damnedest not to change. So.
Should I continue?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so they're going into the dark net, and they meet Double Dan. He's got like 2 heads, and he's the virus maker, and he gives Ralph a virus, and it's called the insecurity virus. This virus looks for flaws and weaknesses that makes a program insecure, and it copies the defect and spreads it all over the game. And that's really interesting because in this, just like in the Ready Player One, the 13th asked the Chief, or women's form, but in that Ready Player One NSTHA movie review, it talks about this being a digital hologram, about our individuals being digital holograms as well. And so it's talking about looking for weaknesses in the program, and people are so programmed that they have so many holes and weaknesses that density can exploit. Mm-hmm. And this virus is an example of exploitation of that, those buttons of insecurity.
Yeah. Which is interesting because I would say pretty much everyone has an insecurity button. So, that kind of virus does exist. I would say in this real losing the hologram, that is something that does exist. And what happens though, which is pretty interesting, when he unleashed the virus in the game, they're expecting Vanellope to, because of her glitch. I think that's why he thought her insecurity was was connected to the glitch as well.
Yeah.
And because she was in an environment that she actually was enjoying, her insecurity level and her glitch level went down. So I don't even think it was able to really do much.
No, it wasn't a problem at all, because she was feeling comfortable and she was being supported by the group. It's Shank, and she was exercising and playing basketball, learning how to drive, learning things from them. And so he came in, and when he put in the virus, he didn't know what it would do. Mm-hmm. And then in the end, it ends up copying his insecurities, which hers was only like a lower percentage, and Ralph's was 100% at the time.
Which is interesting, because I've had individuals try to seek out my insecurity, even in what I do in the past, where there are certain types of situations that I prefer to deal with when I'm doing clearings, in certain situations that I don't like to deal with, because they just were very, very energetically consuming, time consuming, and energy draining. And this individual, because of his desire to control, which is similar to Ralph's desire to control Vanellope, this person wanted to control what I do, because he couldn't do what I do. So it's like, he talked a big talk, but in the end, he couldn't prove anything. I didn't talk a big talk, I just tell you what I do, and I always prove what I can do. So this individual wanted to get into, doing business with me and sending individuals to me. First, wanting to steal, but find that he couldn't steal what I was doing. But then, okay, if I can't steal, I can control him. So what he did, he sent people in that I told him that I weren't really interested in working on, as a means to try to undermine me and make me feel insecure, because he felt that I would fail at doing these things, because I said I wasn't really, all that crazy about doing them because of what I said, what I just said. Reality, sent them in, I dealt with it successfully each time, And I'm like, why is he sending these individuals? But he couldn't figure out why each time he'd send someone who's supposed to make me feel insecure, I would fix the problem. And then I would kind of like, why are you sending these individuals that I told you I'm not really interested? And that's what it was about the person themselves. It's just what the issues were and the amount of energy that it takes for myself and for Ms. A to handle these kind of deals. In terms of like sending individuals in who needed exorcisms. So in the end, it really blew up in his face. But also in the end, with me working on these individuals, I ended up with individuals who were very, very, loyal to what I do, who were very, very supportive of what I do. And said, look, I know this guy's a real deal. So in essence, by him trying to undermine me, he ended up actually helping what I was doing and destroying himself in the process. Because once they saw what I did was extremely clearly provable, they realized that what that person was doing wasn't.
Now he has a newspaper article and a
And
video.
we don't need to talk. We're gonna move on. I'm talking about in that, Okay.
Okay. So now Penelope feels really weird because Shanks is saying that you really should tell Ralph that you want to be here, you want to change your game, and she's telling Penelope that everything will work out. And then Penelope says, but what if it doesn't? What if his feelings get hurt so bad that he won't want to be my friend anymore? And then so she's freaked out. So her insecurity level is rising a little bit more than it was because she was becoming comfortable with the new game.
Mm-hmm.
But then, so the virus enters the game and then starts scanning, starts looking through slaughter race, and she's driving her car and she sees a really big gorilla and she thinks, oh, it's Ralph, and she gets really freaked out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's common for a lot of people where they see someone who makes them uncomfortable and then their insecurity rises as well.
Yeah, also, I think even you could say that if it was like in, real world, so to speak, if she starts to feel insecure all of a sudden about her relationship with that person, it means that that person is focusing on you. So if you're actually enjoying yourself and you're in your zone, and then out of the blue, all of a sudden you start to worry about this particular person, that is like that person, activating a corkscrew that they have in you to be concerned about, Ralph, who literally is more or less in your way, in the way of you doing what you really want to do.
So she ends up crashing after she sees the blow up gorilla, and she ends up with 30% insecurity, and it starts to distribute this glitch of hers that's at 30%. So the buildings start to look glitchy, and she feels like it's all her fault, and that she never should have been there. She never should have tried to change her game. She never should have tried a new experience. And then she's so buildings are starting to look strange and starting to change their shape, and she continues on in the game until she crashes. And let's see. So Shanks is looking for Penelope because her code is not a part of the game. So she's trying to help her get out of the game, and so is Ralph, because he busted a hole, and he came into the game, and he's helping her to get away, and she's apologizing to him, and that she's sorry she wrecked the game, and that she should have listened to him, and then he starts apologizing as well. He says, I didn't mean for this to be that bad. I put a virus in the game. And then she gets really pissed. And she says, you did this. I wouldn't have done this if you wouldn't have said you were going to abandon me in all of Sugar Rush. And then she says, I'm just one of the 13 racers. They would never miss me. And then she says, I wouldn't want to hang out with you for even one more second after what you've done. And then Ralph's like, where are you going? And she's like, wherever you're not. And Ralph's like, I can explain. No, you will not follow me. A friend would never do what you did. Never. And so that whole experience was quite interesting, where she stands up to him for the first time.
Mhm.
Really intensely.
But again, in his effort to literally control her, he ends up, basically screwing something else up, which is, I think, is how it started with them ending up in the internet in the first place. So, he continues the same, behavior and, causes this issue. And I think what happens then, his insecurity starts to kick in,
Yeah.
and the virus picks up on his insecurity, and as you know, then it multiplies into all these realms. And they're all like, looking for Penelope and trying to chase Penelope down. The thing is, it's like, actually when she ends up at the guy that answers all the questions, whatever, the Google guy.
Well, so after that, after she says that to Ralph, she says, leave me alone. And then he's still trying to get her to follow him. And she also, like, she rips off that fetish, the other fetish.
Oh, you mean the hero metal?
The hero metal,
Mm-hmm.
the cookie necklace. And she throws it down, and then his insecurity rises to 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when the virus Arthur finds him.
Mm-hmm.
And starts copying his insecurity and unleashing it on the whole of the internet.
Yeah, and actually, individuals who are like that, Ralph, they definitely have very, very weak egos, and it doesn't take much to just set them off. Which they showed that from numerous times during the the film, where his ego is so weak that he just immediately just goes into even more of a selfish mode. Where it's all that person's fault, who he's basically is interfering with. So with that, she ends up, I guess, when she throws his metal down, all of a sudden you said he multiplies, right? At that point, or I'm
Well,
missing something?
he starts. It's not yet.
Mhm.
It's starting to weaken the internet, and he says, come on, don't leave me. No, 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 no. And then he doesn't follow Penelope, which is interesting. He goes
He
for
tries to
the
get the metal,
fetish.
yeah.
Yeah, for the other fetish.
Mhm.
The fetish that made him feel like a hero. Okay, so then after that, he finds the necklace, but it's broken. It's cracked in half. And that's when the zombie Ralphs come onto the scene.
Now, with that particular metal fetish, would you say that had something to do with him feeling that he was entitled to interfere with her because he's a hero, or because that metal said that he did something for her, and more or less than her doing something for him?
Yeah, well, his status was quite low in the game before he met Penelope, and she's supposed to be a princess, so that immediately makes his status like higher. So
Mhm.
I'm not sure whether that's part of like he's just like a lot of people who have been has-beens, like been famous before, they have a hard time moving on to something different.
Yeah, because that industry, it feeds on them, but then they feed on those who give them attention, to it. And also with someone whose ego is very vulnerable, they need others to to look up to them in order for them to feel like they're viable or they're worth anything. So from that, you said then the zombie
Ralphs
start to come in.
Yeah, they're climbing up all the buildings. They're infesting everything, really. And it's funny because they call the makers of the movie, they called it massive denial of service attack.
All right.
So Ralphs are breaking everything, and they said the Wreck-It Ralph virus is fast moving and destructive. And then each one of the zombies are funny because they're like Fred, instead of saying like brains or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so Penelope and runs to Knowsmore, which he's like a search engine, and they try to hide inside of his little library house. And then they're trying to, keep the zombie Ralphs away, and it talks about how that Ralph tries to come into the little library house as well, And he says, I don't know how this happened. And Nosmore is like, it's clearly because an insecurity virus cloned all of your needy, clingy, insecure, and self-destructive behavior. Your behavior left unchecked destroys friendships, in this particular case, the entire internet.
Yeah, they do literally talk about the fact that, that Ralph is insecure amongst all the other things and so on. But I think from that, it just ends up just snowballing into this, this insanity. And at one point, I don't know what he did, where all of a sudden they all gathered together and created, became a big Ralph.
Well, yes, she got her vehicle, her car, and then put Vanellope in it and Ralph on it as well.
Who got her car?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And then she has a flying vehicle, and so then all of the zombie Ralphs are following Vanellope because they're attracted.
Now they're trying to get out or something like that. I forgot exactly.
No,
where
they're
they were
trying to
supposed
get her.
No,
they're
where
trying to
are they
get
heading
to-
with the car?
They're trying to get to a certain point to get the Ralphs to go into the Ralph zombies to go into it so they can be deleted.
Yeah, yeah.
So
then there's a chase scene.
chase scene.
With us in her car.
yes, and so Ralph says to Vanellope, "I don't blame you if you don't want to be my friend." And then she says, "I never said I didn't want to be your friend. I said you were being a bad friend." So there's always like, they have to make up because.
Because people don't want to be bummed out at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
But,
And they might want to make another movie, so yeah.
yeah.
And then when Ralph sees his insecurity big as life, what do they call it?
Yeah.
Large as life. That he says that's what would you say?
Well, someone say larger than life.
Larger than life. There we go. Thank you, Chief. That's unsettling. He says, and whenever he looks at himself in this massive, writhing bunch of Ralph hymns, he's just like, oh wow, that it made him look at himself, which I thought that was interesting. Sometimes it's hard for people, myself included, to see how you're behaving until you take a look at it yourself.
Well, it was an interesting image because a lot of the work, working on people over time, it's like folks are made up of fragments of themselves, like each fragment has some other experience that, that makes up the whole them. So I thought that was a pretty interesting imagery that they had in that particular part of the movie. But what happens though, that you said that Ralph sees this image, I guess, reflected back to him in Larger Than Life, and supposedly.
Well, that might segue into somewhat a client's question. It says, when Ralph was cloned by the virus, were the clones MCs, or the clones mere consciousness? And then when they grouped together as a huge Ralph, did it become an attachment, or how would you see it, Chief?
Well, I would say that they were more like MCs because attachments themselves try to manipulate the actual person. So the MCs are supporting his psychosis. So MCs support whatever the damage is that you've had, that you've suffered, or trauma, and it hangs on to the trauma, which inevitably will pull you back at times, just triggered by an image or a word or something like that. MCs are notorious for that type of deal. So that's why when I looked at it, it's like fragments, but actually these fragments would be, I would say, portrayed as also as MCs.
And as together they become like an attachment.
Yeah, they support that whole whatever his damage is. So that big him was, I guess, what you would say would be an attachment of of Ralph himself, with all the MCs that support it.
Thank you. So after he takes a good look at it, he says, "Get Vanellope out of here now. I've got a date with the man in the mirror." So, and then you were talking about how some people don't face things until it's undeniable, and usually at the point that there's a lot of damage already done.
Yeah, a lot of times to the point where whatever it is can be resurrected. And a lot of times it does have to do with relationships, where someone's pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and assuming that that other individual will never leave that situation. even in situations where someone's warning an individual of what they're doing and how they're feeling, and they still, for whatever reason, they feel that they know that I've got this person, in my grips. They'll never leave. And I've had excuse me, clients and known people over the years who would have this particular attitude about another person, and in most cases, that other person does leave, and then all of a sudden, a lot of times denial will kick in, and where they say, I don't know what happened, and they'll run around to all these other individuals, not the person who literally said, I'm out of here, but other individuals, and try to get this essence from all these other people. I don't even quite understand it, other than almost like charging themselves up to try to get these individuals to convince you or whoever it is to go backwards into a situation that they've made a decision over time, to do. So when we're talking about, irreparable damage, that's the problem with individuals who have that type of mentality, that Ralph, Rick and Ralph type of mentality. But again, I'll let you go ahead and finish up, and then I'll add to.
Okay. So Ralph starts to he's having kind of a psychological break or schizoid kind of thing, where he's fighting with this giant clutch of MCs and the Ralph zombies, and he's like, she's not your friend, she's my friend. He's still owning her, but he's fighting with, which is really funny.
Yeah, what part of him owns?
Really. Yeah. So then he starts using a giant red pin and beating, trying to, he's hitting this giant clutch of Ralph zombies, and it just keeps, Vanellope is trying to stay away from the giant Ralph zombie, and she's almost falls, and then the Ralph zombie catches her, and then Ralph's like, you put her down, and the virus slaps him away, and it's just like kind of the back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And then
it's almost like a possession.
Possession.
Where the one part of him that is actually himself is
possessed by the
possessed. By the Ralph zombie. It's kind of, but not exactly, but kind of like that. And where he's pushed out of the picture.
Yeah.
So it just knocks him out of the picture, and whatever is possessing the person is now, center stage.
Yes.
And so from that point, he,
so at that point, Ralph says, you put her down, and then Vanellope starts talking to the Ralph zombie. You're acting like a real bad guy here. I'll never be your friend. And then the virus gets angry. And then Ralph starts making fun of the Ralph zombie, and he says, hey, doofus, catch me if you can, you big dummy. And then, so now, in the end, the Ralph zombie has a hold of Ralph and is squeezing him. And so Vanellope, pipes up for him and is like, stop it, you're squishing him. You're going to kill my best friend. Fine, you win. Okay, please put him down. I'll be your only friend, and we'll be together forever. Isn't that what you want? She's willing to go back into being the fetish, back into in that role. Let's see, this for that minute.
Well, in a sense, it's like saying her character, appeasing, but she's willing to sacrifice for Ralph. Was Ralph really willing to sacrifice for her? But it's kind of skewed, because it's like he's trying to save her from him, from himself.
Yes, that's true.
But hers is more like, she's going to sacrifice herself to save him from himself.
Yes.
It's pretty weird. But,
yes, because it also goes into like the fairy tale ending, because he's like, that's not what I want. It's not right to keep a friend from her dreams. You don't own her. He's not talking to himself, which is sometimes, like you said, sometimes it's really good to talk to yourself when you're struggling internally. But he's like, that's not how friendship works. Like, suddenly he knows how friendship works. But, and then, let's see. like, you need to let her go. I know it's going to hurt a lot when you do. A lot. But you're going to be okay, and we're going to be
Oh
all
gosh,
right.
yeah, that's what it's
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
It's like the Hollywood ending,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he
Hollywood.
comes to some realization, and wow, he's not such a bad guy after all, and whatever. That's not real. That's all BS. If somebody has the issues that he has, it doesn't change overnight, and I don't care if he's looking in the mirror. And generally, if you're looking in the mirror, you're looking at Ralph Zombie or something else in there, and it's definitely not going to tell you to behave civilly. So it definitely was an ending so that the audience would feel like, oh, that's really nice. He came around, and he's not such a bad guy after all. No, it's not real. He's still a jerk that he was before. And probably when they do Ralph 3 or whatever, he'll be a jerk again.
Yeah. So in the end, Vanellope's like, thanks, buddy. And Ralph's like, wow, I feel good about this. I read a self-help book and now I'm good.
Wow.
And because she's like, you overcome, wow, Ralph, you overcome your insecurity. You did it. And he's like, yeah, I feel better.
Wow, overnight, all of a sudden, wow, yesterday. That's why I had clients in the past who were just like, oh, I'm clear now, right? After one session, and said, you haven't got a clue anymore. So it's because of this kind of nonsense, that people really do believe the BS that they watch in movies, and that, like, there's some, I don't know, some person, up on high who are producing these things. Most of the writers who write the stuff, they barely know their own bust from a hole in the ground. Pretty interesting script. Some of the stuff is very, very obvious and so on. And it does lead you along. Obviously they want Ralph to look like what Ralph looks like so that, in the end, they can have this kind of ending, but, Ralph has to be the jerk that he is in order for the movie to be whatever it is. But at the end, it's where it really just, it's just hard for me to just really deal with some of this stuff. But again, I think they even make it not so much worse. It's not that much better when she ends up going and joining the slaughter race again.
Yeah, because, they really played up the part about, like, instant, everything's over because I want it to be over.
Yeah.
And because they made the Ralph zombie start glowing, bright and yellow, and Vanellope, wow, you fixed your insecurity.
Yes,
You're right.
Ralph was an idiot. Now he's enlightened. He's an enlightened being.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's nothing nonsense.
So the virus falls apart and into little pieces, and Ralph falls, and the princesses save him because that's whatever.
Yeah, they got to get that piece of action from the princess stuff. So after that,
then Shanks helps Vanellope respawn into the slaughter race game, and so that's when the question is Shanks' intention to help Vanellope or defeat, and you already answered that question. So.
But also, I think Shanks kind of defends Ralph in a way, but it's like someone who doesn't see the whole picture. That Ralph went and he did all these things for you, and in reality, no, Ralph did it for himself. So he sacrificed this, he wouldn't have to sacrifice anything if he wasn't such a selfish individual. So that part I felt like, okay, they're just trying to do this this friend thing. And define what friends are and so on.
Yeah, and even in the end, he still gives her this half of the necklace, half of the hero necklace, and it still feels like control.
Yeah. In other words, to keep you from actually growing away from it, we have this, this half. You have to come back and give me this half, right? So it's like a ploy to keep her from actually, still moving on. Totally moving on and separating from her past.
Yeah, and you talked about gift giving as a way to manipulate others, and also that gift can hold the intent of that person. So his intent is, I still want to have you around. You better have this necklace next time we see you.
Yeah, we're reading between the lines. Yeah, that's literally what it does say. So they're saying one thing, but also with the symbol, they're saying another thing, that he still hasn't let her go.
And so so Ralph, at the end, he starts kind of narrating, and he says, I'll be honest, things have changed a lot. It's never going to be the same. The racers are not so obnoxious anymore. It's like, oh, also another magic pill thing is those kids
Yeah.
are suddenly not assholes.
It's turning juvenile delinquents into like
Yeah.
Nice little kids. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then it talks about like these parents who don't have any experience, but then suddenly they're just like professionals at parenting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then Ralph joins a book club, and he starts his new routine.
Mhm.
He just adds a little something to it,
Mhm.
and he still
Like reading.
yeah, reading, and he can still play the hero because he actually got the steering wheel for the whole sugar rush, and they can look up to him, so he gets what he wanted.
Yeah. 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 And then yeah, and in the way he does.
So it is 10:32. We can either go into more detail of certain things, or however you would like to do.
Well, if anyone has any questions that they that they're holding on to, feel free.
Okay.
So
I'll continue.
yeah, we can continue.
Okay. It was we were talking about it during the end of the movie, and you were saying, Ralph was probably able to move on and not cling on to Penelope as hard because he had all of those racers to look up to him, all the people in
More
Maybe
who were feeding on him.
yes.
Yeah, who decided that because before it was Penelope, accepting him where no one else would.
right.
And he bumbled his way into getting the acceptance of the other racers by, returning, bringing the steering wheel and repairing, so that the game could be repaired.
Yes, all of the sugar rush, and then not just that, because he, broke the internet and made all those videos. He started, touting himself to the other gamers. Like he was, introducing them to Burt Pie, and showing them his video of Burt, his video that was trending about him burning pie.
Yeah, which is still pretty selfish because he basically was feeding this to these people, So I think that burnt pie is really good. You should think burnt pie is really good,
Yeah,
and he served it up to these. Yeah, so he still continues to be a jerk, a self-centered jerk, in I guess in all ways really. I forgot what the other things he was doing beyond that.
Well, he like sometimes people feel like for example, New Year's, a new you or something. Like he started, reading, the books and things like that, and I guess he felt that he overcame his, insecurity, so now he's gonna try to, branch off into something. But he still keeps his old habits in terms of what you were saying with the burnt pie, and just expecting others to be into it because he is.
Yeah. But I mean, it was entertaining. I'll give it that much. Definitely when I first watched it, kept my interest all the way, from start to finish. But again, I'm always analyzing, and I'm always, turning my nose up at a few things here and there, and so on, and just looking at the programming in these types of, in movies in general. And so I guess the programming again, has to do with friends, and it seemed like it was like putting up with these people who perceive themselves to be a friend, or just being more patient with individuals who who are not really good friends, literally, who are very, very selfish individuals, because they like you or something. And there are individuals who will deal with people like that because they feel insecure, or they may be kind of an outcast or whatever.
You were talking about, Chief, that there are people who are like, Ralph, and then there are people who are even at the stage of being like the Ralph virus, to where they have very simplistic modes of being. They have very linear focus in whatever they pursue. We're talking about people in the past that have that kind of mentality.
Yeah, well, when I was, I'd say early 20s, and I had this interaction with the father unit, and his background was one just pretty modest 8th grade education, so on, just literally just a hard-working guy. Never really felt very comfortable amongst people who would be considered somewhat intellectual and so on. And my experience at that time, going through college and, and interacting with certain people and knowing the direction that I wanted to go in, didn't have anything to do with his low-level country way of speaking, which I wouldn't put it down, but the way that he dealt with me for using a word having to do with something, looking up something. I said, yeah, I think I'll do some research on that. And just the fact that I said I'll do some research, it just ruffled his feathers, and it said you need to learn how to speak to regular people. So that type of behavior where they try to pull you back into something away from where I want to go. I said, look, I know how hard you work because I worked with your ass for since I was 12 years old, and I don't want to do that. And where I'm going, people are a bit more articulate. No grammar Nazis or anything like that, but a lot more articulate. So I was moving towards that, and instead of feeling like, oh, that's cool, the kids trying to improve his lot in life and so on and so forth. Instead of that, it was like maybe a jealousy or something. Maybe it definitely had to do with an insecurity, wanted to pull me back into this realm that I had spent a whole lot of energy escaping. So even going to school where I did end up going to school in Pittsburgh from Michigan, a lot of it had to do with me getting the hell away from him. But in the end, that I realized that, and then you realize that when you deal with certain people and you decide to make a change in your life, there's a good reason why you want to make a change in your life. And sometimes, you may even go off over that individual may be, a key reason for you, deciding to do certain things. And sometimes you're just like, oh, you don't really, look at it that closely, but because of his behavior, and I felt, pretty much attacked about who I want to be, who I am at that time, and who I want to be. And I realized that, wow, this is, the reason I got away from this individual. Because I had no desire to continue living the way that we were living when I was growing up. So you end up with people who are, very much like that, and have clients who have, individuals who have parents who have, that very similar attitude. If you seem to be moving into a zone that they don't understand, or maybe their ego is based on you still being a little 10-year-old in their eyes, they'll try to criticize whatever it is that you're doing or wherever you're going. Unless you're someone, you have a parent that says, oh, I want you to be a doctor, I want you to be a lawyer, be that, and be that. Even if they're, blue collar or whatever, but they made the decision on who you're going to be. And when I was dealing with men's conferences, there were a number of men in men's conferences who had gone through, being a doctor and a lawyer, and found that, in the end they said, well, is this all there is? I still don't feel fulfilled. But they were literally admitted that they were living up to something that their parents wanted them to do, opposed to something that they themselves wanted to do. And someone said, well, at least you got it, and you got your house and all this other stuff and so on and so forth. And now you can afford to actually do your own personal search and and so on and so forth. So I don't know if you say it's a double-edged sword, but in reality, I think it's always good to be able to look for what you want in your life later for whoever else is around you. And when we talk about family, we'll all say it's a loaded word anyway.
Chief made me realize that there were certain memories that I had that kept me tied to the relatives. For example, I left that situation because they were trying to keep me as a child, and then berating me for being childish. And then they would do things like, we would go to the the aunt unit would take me to a 5-star hotel or take me to, Universal Studios or Disney World or, you know, buffets and things like that. And I thought that she was doing that because she cared, but she was telling me that actually people do those sorts of things because they want you to laud it over it.
Well, from what you were saying, she literally had her idea of who you were supposed to be, and who you were supposed to be was never going to be more than who she is. So, and so, literally, I think you said something to the point like, yeah, if it wasn't for me, you would never experience something like this, and so on and so forth, which it was literally had to do with her manipulation, her control, her being literally a Wreck-It Ralph, because she had in her mind where she wanted Ms. A to be, or the rest of Ms. A, or the rest of her life. She felt comfort as long as this little street urchin stayed a street urchin in her mind.
Yeah, because she would say things like, you're really lucky so that you can just draw something and give it to someone as a gift. Not everyone can do that. You're really lucky about this and this and that. And I'm like, why are you trying to convince me? What are you trying to convince me about? I still don't really totally understand why she would do those, but it felt manipulative.
Well, a lot of that has to do with jealousy issues where a person just, if they feel comfortable just showing their behind to you, they'll say weird stuff like that. Because again, they want you to feel like maybe it's too good for you to be able to do that. I want to be the all, and I have to find someone that I can be the all over. And there are other people out there, but there are folks who are doing more or so-called better than they are, financially or whatever, and they won't look to those individuals because that's kind of like a mountain they can't really climb, but they'll look for someone, and usually in the family a lot of times that they can actually put down. And you'll see children being seasoned at a young age by certain other siblings or even by parents, where you're inept, or you're stupid, or you're so slow, or you're clumsy, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately for me, the mother unit was one of these individuals that would say, well, you can do better than that. Opposed to just like, oh, you're so clumsy, or you're just so stupid. They said, well, you should, just try harder. I know you can do better than that. But, that's, that's not always the case. You end up finding a lot of these situations, and a lot of individuals who come as clients with these types of background where there's always someone, even in a passive way, putting them down. They said, well, this person cares for me. I said, well, tell me some of the things that, that they've said to you, or we'll talk about certain situations that they were in, and inevitably they'll find that this person isn't as altruistic as they thought they were, that this person literally has some very serious ego issues. And again, we're talking about, this family, word family as a loaded word. There's oftentimes, like looking at certain rental units of my own, having to do with the father unit, where I realized after a certain point that he had a jealousy over, he was jealous of my life. When I got on in my business and so on and so forth, and doing really well, and moving places where he was afraid to go, like New York City and all these, all of that, I found that this person who I thought was supposed to have my best interest and supposed to feel good about what I was doing, turned out that individual was actually jealous of what I was doing. And even some uncles, I found, similar behavior with, so-called, so this whole, the family business and all of that, it's a loaded word. Consciousness or consciousness. And I'll repeat again, if a person outside of the family treats you better than the person inside the family, I'm going to hang out with the one who's outside the family. Yeah.
I was thinking about this situation with Ralph and Penelope and how he treats her like his fetish. And in the past, I was used to people expecting me to overwork for them to show them that I cared or whatever. But then I was like, have I ever been treated like a fetish? And then I realized the mother unit that I had, when the father unit died, she suddenly became overly huggy, like hugging me, but she hardly ever hugged me before he passed away. And also she started rubbing her breasts on me, which was really freaky. And I was like, get the fuck away from me. And then she was like watching me while I was sleeping. And she'd always say, you know, you're so much like your father. You're just like your father. You know, I'm like, ugh. And then I realized that's a fetish kind of behavior.
Yeah, beyond other things.
Yeah,
but,
no other things.
yeah, it becomes when people, well, when folks depend on other individuals, and probably as a kid you didn't realize just maybe how much she depended on him energetically.
Yes, definitely.
Even though, you know, in marriages there's always some kind of fighting going on from time to time, you may not even think that they really like that with each other that much, and sometimes maybe they don't, but the other person just may be used to that person's energy, or that person taking care of things, or feeling very, secure because it's all in that other person's lap all the time.
Yes, and
So it's not like she was playing out her insecurities with you.
totally. Because before she would just like, she didn't care if I was overworked. She just add more work to the work that I had. It didn't matter if the siblings were not doing anything. She would just add more work to myself and not care. And only the father unit noticed that the pile of responsibility was ending up on my shoulders. They were bringing in pets and trees and plants, and then just leaving them to die, and I would take care of them. It was crazy.
Yeah, but again, I think also having to do with concepts of family and mothers and daughters is really, yeah, it seemed weird. I was going to say interesting dynamic. I have seen situations, you know, just up close where a mother would become jealous of the daughter if the daughter is close to the father. So again, we're talking about some really weird psychological issues that at this point is still really hard for me to understand because it's not balanced. You know, I couldn't quite figure out what that was about. But then I will find out that it's something that's similar that would happen throughout generations, having to do with daughters, getting to a certain age, or even not getting to a certain age, or just having the father literally paying attention to this young person and getting her the things that he feels that will benefit that child. You know, so again, it's about attention or energy, or I think it has to do, well, I should say more or less it has to do with a person's attachments and what's feeding. You know, so if she no longer has the attention, all the attention of the spouse, it means he's giving some of that energy to one of the children. And so their density, so the density doesn't give a shit about family. It doesn't believe in that. It's just another little ruse in order for them to feed. So they want, all of his energy like they had before. And so they end up, angry or, having these issues with the other person that he's giving attention to. And that attention, is, for me, was just very altruistic as what I perceived a parent to be, because of what, how I was raised in, in my mindset, was to basically nurture those kids. So she didn't have much of a problem with this son, but because, again, the sexist mothers can be closer to the son a lot of time, daughters closer to the father for whatever reason, And with my daughter, when she got to a certain age, she got closer to me, I should say probably after 10 or 11. She ended up spending more time with me and more conversation and asking me, talking to me and so on and so forth, where the son got off into his own little world. And even when I tried to get him to do things, the mother unit would intervene and, would, put a wedge between whatever I'm trying to do with that guy, with him. And it was kind of interesting when he was the first one born, and her attention was going to him. But it was, I'm not a selfish person. I said, well, that's parenting. He's a kid, and actually kind of humorous at one point. I look at, when I looked at it back then, it was kind of like weird, but kind of funny. Where, he's an infant and he's nursing, breastfeeding, and I'm sitting there, and he's breastfeeding and looking at me while he's, chowing down on one breast and then squeezing the other one and looking at me. And which was kind of weird. But anyway, again, but for me, that, I didn't have any issue as far as like the amount of attention that she gave to these kids. So again, it has to do with an imbalance. And also, a lot of folks have no control over their attachments and don't even realize that they have them. And that's the odd thing. It's like when a person is really controlled by the attachments cause people to behave badly. They really do. And for some reason, the person would not acknowledge that they're behaving badly, or you just don't understand me, or so on and so forth. But I feel like I might be drifting off a bit.
Oh, no, you were talking also about mothers and daughters, or fathers and sons, and how sometimes parents will try to live their lives through the kids, or corkscrew them so much that they're like living their life literally through that child. Yeah,
that happens at times. Well, a lot of times, really. And sometimes there are parents who feel like they missed the boat if the kid ends up having a more interesting life than they do. And so I've seen jealousy come up there also, with the kid who really would just want to give you a lot of props as a parent for, you'd say, well, you did a good job, and I got out there in the world, I was able to figure things out with your support, and you should feel feel good about what I'm doing. I'm doing this, and I'm going to try to give back to you. But instead of that, there ends up being this jealousy, because that's you're living a life that they would like to live, even with all the density and everything that's going on. And and you're looking, trying to look out for the pole shooting out of the ground. All they can see is that your life is more interesting than theirs, and then the jealousy ensues and the weirdness. So I don't know where we're at as far as time.
6 minutes till, or we can go ahead and then 6 minutes.
Well, I think because I'm kind of stretching it out. So
Okay.
Unless anyone has anything to add, I think this might be one of the first times that we're actually ending 5 minutes early. So if no one has anything to add to it, I think we're gonna leave it where it is before I put my foot in my mouth. So okay, everyone, thank you for showing up again, and thanks for the questions and everything and your patience. And we'll catch up with you later. Next forum will be muscle testing, and the next one after that will be the women's forum, and we plan to start the review, or maybe do the whole review on Monsters Inc. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.